David Hayes, a single father, abandoned a six-figure finance career to work as a night shift janitor, accepting contempt from his wealthy family. He sacrificed status to gain time with his son, but was deemed a complete failure and lived with a crushing secret. He accidentally meets Evelyn Thorne, a lonely, powerful female billionaire, besieged by a relentless takeover conspiracy that threatens her entire legacy. The stark contrast between the man despised for lacking money and the woman isolated for having too much forged a silent connection. The tension between their worlds was palpable, leading to an unexpected confrontation. David Hayes was a man in his early 40s, his shoulders carrying the permanent, heavy weight of responsibility. His face was lined with quiet exhaustion, and he was defined by the faint, antiseptic scent of professional-grade floor wax and industrial detergent. He was the dedicated, meticulous single father to his 12-year-old son, Leo, having lost his wife, Sarah, to a swift, unforgiving illness 5 years prior. David was not always a janitor. He held an advanced degree and had worked for years as a high-stress, high-earning analyst in corporate mergers and acquisitions. His career was on a relentless, six-figure trajectory, but the sudden, brutal reality of sole parenthood changed his calculus entirely. The M&A lifestyle demanded 90-hour weeks, constant travel, and absolute dedication, a commitment David realized would cost him his son's childhood. In a move his entire social circle considered professional suicide, he deliberately resigned. He traded his six-figure salary, his corner office, and his suit for a clean uniform in the night shift, officially the custodial manager for the Thorne Tower. The grueling, lonely 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift gave him the daytime flexibility crucial for Leo's school runs, appointments, homework help, and most importantly, presence. This was the ultimate, necessary trade-off. Money for time. His family, both his own and his late wife's well-established, wealthy relatives, viewed this choice as a catastrophic, unforgivable failure of ambition and intellect. They saw his stability as stagnation. Their weekly gatherings had evolved into silent judgment courts, thinly masked as concerned family check-ins. His successful parents lamented his wasted potential and the softness of his choice. His in-laws, led by his late wife's sister, offered condescending advice and unsolicited loan offers designed to make him feel indebted. David, money talks, his uncle, a sharp, successful lawyer, would frequently declare, leaning in conspiratorially, Leo needs a successful blueprint. He needs to see a man who wins life, not just cleans up after it. You're setting him up to fail before he even starts. These words were like tiny, persistent needles, and David found his only shield in stoic silence and perfect politeness. He had chosen emotional presence over financial profit, a profound human truth the materialistic family could never ever grasp. The constant familial negativity was Leo's silent curse. The boy, sensitive and intelligent, was internalizing the deep, burning shame. He frequently heard the brutal comparisons to his high-achieving cousins in private schools. Leo had recently started lying about his father's job to his new middle school friends, claiming David was a building administrator who worked in property management. Hint. This quiet deceit was David's greatest internal pain, 1,000 times worse than any public insult. He knew he had to persist, focusing only on the one thing he could control, being a meticulous, dependable father and an absolutely impeccable worker. The Thorne Tower was the glittering, cold symbol of global finance, the headquarters of Stellar Dynamics, a massive, unforgiving global tech and finance conglomerate. David treated every floor tile, every stainless steel surface, and every massive mahogany desk with a fierce, almost ritualistic respect. His cleaning was not just routine maintenance. It was a deeply personal discipline, a silent, daily protest against the chaos and contempt of his personal life. He kept the building flawless, a perfect, quiet sanctuary. The woman who owned the building, the CEO, was Evelyn Thorne. In her mid-30s, she was the epitome of power, brilliant, relentlessly driven, and one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the world. She had inherited the legacy but was constantly under a multi-front siege by ruthless rivals, internal conflicts, and the oppressive, isolating weight of responsibility. She lived a life surrounded by forced deference and transactional relationships. She had hundreds of acquaintances but no true friends. The only person in her life who treated her with non-transactional honesty was her elderly, silent driver. The chance encounter occurred around 2 a.m. in the absolute dead of night. Evelyn, physically and mentally drained from a critical 10-hour board meeting on the hostile takeover attempt, stumbled out of the executive elevator. David, pushing his floor buffer, instantly and instinctively stepped aside, recognizing her profile even in his exhaustion. They were the only two living, breathing souls awake on the 55th floor executive suite. Evelyn, her mind racing with complex financial models and counter strategies, didn't see him clearly and clipped the edge of his cleaning machine. The jolt caused her to lose her grip on a thick stack of papers, the heavily annotated minutes and critical strategy documents for the hostile takeover attempt she was desperately fighting. They fluttered, scattering across the polished marble floor like expensive dead leaves. Evelyn was too spent to even offer a sharp reaction, her eyes glazing over with pure fatigue. David didn't panic or rush. He instantly shut off the noisy buffer, knelt down on the cold floor, and gently gathered every single page. He didn't just scoop them. He organized them, aligning them perfectly by page number and sequence, a habit and skill honed by years of finance training. His hands moved with the forgotten, analytical precision of a top-tier analyst. Evelyn watched, transfixed by his careful, unhurried movements. This wasn't merely competence. It was a profound, silent respect for the order in the work, regardless of the content. She offered a rushed, automatic, "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I apologize." He looked up, his face lined with quiet exhaustion, but his eyes kind and calm. "It's just David," he corrected softly, his genuine smile radiating pure, placating honesty. They exchanged a few meaningless, tired sentences about the late hour. Evelyn quickly left, her mind still reeling from the financial battle. But the quiet image of the janitor, with the meticulous hands and honest, non-judgmental eyes, a total contrast to the predatory greed she faced daily, stayed firmly rooted in her memory. A faint, almost imperceptible connection of shared, quiet, profound burden had just begun. The accidental meetings between David and Evelyn soon became a strangely predictable, scheduled part of the late-night routine. Evelyn was constantly pulling all-nighters, dealing with the existential pressures of running a vulnerable global corporation. David, pushing his silent machine, was the only human presence she ever encountered between midnight and 6 a.m. The visual contrast between them was extreme. Evelyn in her custom-tailored power suit and 3-inch heels. David in his humble, well-pressed custodial uniform. But their interactions were stunningly, beautifully normal. David was the only soul in the world who greeted her with simple, human, non-transactional courtesy. "Good evening, Miss Thorne. I hope the spreadsheets are kinder than the stockholders tonight." He treated her like a person under pressure, not a position of untouchable power. Their conversations evolved quickly from short pleasantries to surprisingly deep, momentary philosophical exchanges about the crushing weights of their respective worlds. Evelyn, without revealing her full, frightening isolation, confessed the debilitating loneliness she felt at the top. She spoke of the constant paranoia, the unavoidable betrayals, and the horrifying realization that everyone around her, her staff, her rivals, even her dates, only respected the wealth, never the woman hidden inside the power suit. She was trapped in a cold, silent, gilded cage. David reciprocated, equally vague about his family's identity and status. He shared the crushing feeling of being respected for his past potential, but losing all dignity and respect the moment he chose a life of service and parental presence. "They respect the dollar, Miss Thorne. They see the uniform, and they immediately assume failure and lack of ambition. They simply cannot see the time I gained with my son, which is the only real, non-depreciating asset that matters to me." One evening, David's carefully constructed schedule was suddenly disrupted. Leo's late after-school debate club ran long, and David had no choice but to bring his son to the empty tower before his shift started. Leo sat quietly on a secured bench near the security desk, diligently working on his advanced math homework. Evelyn, descending the elevator at 11 p.m., saw the powerful, quiet, moving scene. David kneeling beside Leo, gently, patiently checking his complex math equations with the same meticulous care he used to clean the lobby's granite floors. The moment was sealed when Leo then reached out and placed a small, crayon-drawn picture of a ship on the sea into his father's apron pocket. Evelyn was instantly, profoundly moved. Growing up, her own father had been a cold, distant titan of industry, their interactions strictly transactional and brief. This simple, profound tenderness was completely alien to her world, yet intensely desirable and moving. Meanwhile, the relentless pressure from David's family intensified further. The upcoming gala planning had given them renewed ammunition. His mother-in-law cornered him in the parking lot one afternoon, her voice a poisonous stream of forced fake concern. "David, this is not just about you anymore. Leo needs a better life, a better narrative. He needs someone successful, ambitious, not someone whose primary skill is buffing marble. He's falling behind because of your stability. You need to think about your son's university prospects, not just your flexible hours. Have you even saved for college?" The brutal words finally pierced his carefully constructed emotional armor. David, sitting alone in his small car that night, began to seriously question if his sacrifice, his greatest act of love, was selfishly and fundamentally harming his son's future. That deep, quiet internal conflict, the doubt of a good father, made him profoundly weary and vulnerable. On an unusually quiet, desolate night, Evelyn found David sitting alone in the main lobby, the floor buffer idle, his head buried deep in his hands, resting on the cold, polished steel. The exhaustion was complete. The failure his family projected seemed suddenly undeniable and real. Evelyn realized she wasn't just looking at a diligent janitor. She was looking at a broken man at the absolute end of his emotional rope. Evelyn approached him slowly, cautiously, not as the CEO who owned the building and his job, but as a deeply tired human being who perfectly understood the profound, crushing weight of loneliness and the impossible demands of a cruel world. She spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper, echoing in the vast empty lobby. "David, coffee. Now. The executive kitchen is open. I need a break from my spreadsheets, and I think profoundly that you need a break from your thoughts." David hesitated, knowing this crossed every single boundary of professional conduct and corporate hierarchy. But the sheer non-judgmental shared humanity in her request shattered his remaining reserve. He wiped his face quickly and nodded silently, accepting the lifeline. They sat in the sterile, silent, empty executive kitchen. Two souls from wildly, impossibly different worlds, sharing a moment of profound, non-judgmental empathy. Evelyn realized David was the most grounded, authentic, and disciplined person she knew, despite his absolute lack of a title. David saw Evelyn as a frightened, immensely lonely woman hidden beneath a formidable, diamond-sharp layer of ambition and power. In that quiet, shared room, Evelyn made an internal, silent, irreversible decision. David Hayes deserved to be seen, not just by her, but by the world, for who he truly was. She resolved to make sure his entire family and the community that judged him finally saw his true, quiet value. The annual charity gala, a colossal, ostentatious showcase event hosted by David's judgmental in-laws, arrived a month later. It was a blatant display of wealth, complex social connections, and the aggressively curated success of the family unit. David reluctantly attended with Leo, knowing they were present only as necessary, embarrassing tokens. The quiet family member who still needed to be seen and pitied. The passive-aggressive insults began immediately upon arrival. A cousin remarked loudly, "David, I heard you keep the tower cleaner than my operating room. Amazing attention to detail for such repetitive work." An uncle, spotting David near the drink station, made a show of patting him forcefully on the back. "Good to see you, David. We decided to go with the external catering service for the post-party cleanup, but it's always nice to know we have a free backup plan, just in case, eh?" The man laughed loudly, drawing immediate snide snickers from nearby relatives. Leo's face, already pale and utterly defeated, immediately dropped. David simply offered his customary, tight-lipped, non-committal smile and turned away, refusing to engage with the toxic behavior. The final, crushing blow came from his mother-in-law, who pulled him aside, her face cold and hard. "David," she hissed, "the university applications are next year. Leo cannot succeed if he has to constantly defend your simple life. If you don't find a proper, respectable job that can fund his tuition by Christmas, we will intervene. We will take custody and ensure he has the future he deserves. You are failing him." This direct, existential threat to his relationship with Leo snapped David's restraint. He was about to finally speak to reveal the truth of his financial planning and his past when the room's bustling, arrogant noise was suddenly, brutally silenced. A voice amplified dramatically by the event coordinator's massive speakers boomed, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guest, a true titan of industry and chairwoman of the host committee, Miss Evelyn Thorne." Evelyn Thorne, radiant, impossibly elegant, and terrifyingly powerful, entered the ballroom. She wore a custom-made gown and carried the palpable aura of multi-billion-dollar authority. The entire atmosphere shifted instantly from smug family pride to stunned, fearful, silent reverence. Everyone in the room, the lawyers, the politicians, the major donors, rushed forward, desperate to greet her, to press a business card into her hand, or simply to bask briefly in her immense reflected power. Evelyn, however, had a meticulously planned, powerful agenda. She scanned the massive room, ignoring the predictable tidal wave of power brokers and desperate social climbers. She walked directly, purposefully, across the entire ballroom, bypassing the hostess, the major donors, the governor's wife, and the politicians, heading straight and unerringly to where David and Leo were standing awkwardly near the abandoned coat check. She stopped perfectly in front of David, placing a warm, gentle, yet immensely powerful hand on his arm. She spoke clearly, her voice cutting through the remaining, terrified silence. "David, I'm so incredibly glad you and Leo could make it. Thank you for coming tonight. Your presence means a great deal to me." She used his first name, displaying a familiarity and respect that was impossible to mistake or dismiss. His entire extended family, led by his mother-in-law and the mocking uncle, watched in complete, stunned, slack-jawed disbelief. They stood frozen, unable to comprehend the sight of the world's most powerful young CEO talking intimately and respectfully to the man they had relentlessly mocked as a simple janitor. Evelyn then took the stage for her scheduled remarks. She began her short speech on charity and community investment, but midway through she paused, her eyes searching out David and Leo in the crowd, her expression becoming profoundly solemn. The room held its breath, sensing a shift in the tone. Many of you know I've faced an enormous existential professional challenge recently, a hostile takeover attempt that threatened to destroy decades of my family's work and my personal legacy, Evelyn stated, her voice strong and unwavering. You all assume I got through it with only clever lawyers, sharp analysts, and vast piles of cash. But when I was at my absolute lowest, most isolated point, dealing with profound exhaustion and despair, I found my most trusted advisor, the person who reminded me what genuine, non-negotiable integrity looked like. She looked back at David, her expression solemn and powerful. That person is here tonight. My most trusted confidant in human character, the man who quietly helped me rediscover my inner footing and my corporate purpose, Mr. David Hayes. He has the kind of inherent, disciplined integrity and moral clarity that all the money in the world simply cannot buy or replicate. The family members exchanged frantic, disbelieving glances. The whispers in the room became a terrified, profound silence. They watched their perceived failure, the humble janitor, suddenly become the CEO's public ally and moral compass. They didn't know whether to desperately apologize or simply faint from the shock. Evelyn then continued, firmly revealing the private truth David had kept hidden for years. I know some of you in this room only see a clean uniform and a low-wage job. What you absolutely don't know is that David willingly sacrificed a lucrative, promising, six-figure executive career path in order to be a present, full-time, emotionally available father to his son after his wife's passing. He chose the hard path of stability and service over the easy, self-serving path of wealth and relentless ambition. He knowingly traded a high-status salary for a custodial uniform and the critical, irreplaceable time he needed to heal and raise his son in peace. That profound, selfless choice to protect his family's emotional stability and well-being above all financial status defines true human success in a way that no corporate balance sheet could ever represent. The uncle who had cruelly mocked the cleanup looked physically ill, his arrogant smile completely erased. He finally comprehended the staggering magnitude of David's sacrifice and the unforgivable depths of his own past cruelty. Leo, who had been instinctively hiding his small body in his face, slowly, tentatively raised his head. He looked at his father, his eyes no longer filled with shame or embarrassment, but with an overwhelming, incandescent pride and a sudden, sharp, definitive understanding of his father's immense, quiet, moral strength. David, the absolute focus of the entire ballroom, simply offered Evelyn a calm, respectful, dignified nod. He offered no smug look, no bitter retort to his humiliated family. His dignity was his ultimate, quiet, powerful victory. His honor was publicly and unequivocally restored by the one person whose opinion held absolute, unquestionable power in that room. A public validation so massive it needed no further defense. The entire ballroom, now viewing David exclusively through Evelyn's respected eyes, was steeped in a heavy, defining, and deeply uncomfortable silence. David Hayes, the janitor, was definitively the most respected, powerful, and admired man in the room. In the immediate days and weeks following the catastrophic gala, the power dynamic within David's extended family shifted dramatically and irreversibly. The immediate reaction was chaos. The phone calls to David began instantly. Some relatives called with clumsy, transparently self-serving, half-hearted apologies and desperate, immediate offers of networking help or investment opportunities. Others simply avoided him entirely, unable to face the devastating truth of their past cruelty and judgment. David accepted their attempts at reconciliation with his customary, quiet grace, but he made absolutely no effort to seek or demand their newfound, transactional validation. He maintained his simple focus: Leo and his work. Evelyn's presence in their lives transitioned seamlessly from a professional ally to a genuine, trusted family friend. She intentionally invited David and Leo to low-key, non-ostentatious events, an afternoon at the quiet, local history museum, a simple dinner at her house, always prioritizing normalcy, ease, and genuine connection over any form of financial grandeur. She was searching for a real, non-transactional life, and David provided the blueprint. Leo, completely free from the crushing, corrosive weight of having to constantly defend his father's worth or his job title, visibly blossomed. He started openly and proudly talking about his dad's quiet strength and immense discipline. His confidence and self-esteem soared immediately, no longer needing to compare himself to his status-obsessed cousins. He carried his father's dignity as his own, using the unassailable rationale that David possessed unparalleled insight into corporate morale, meticulous organization, and fundamental human character. Evelyn offered him a significant, newly created role at Stellar Dynamics: Chief of Corporate Integrity, Personnel Morale, and De-escalation. The position was created specifically for him, utilizing his unique, highly disciplined skills in meticulous organization, reading emotional tells, and his profound, unwavering moral compass. David took nearly a week to consider the offer carefully. He was deeply cautious not to be swayed by the sudden, massive status or the substantial increase in salary. He demanded proof that the role was built on purpose, not pity. He accepted only because the role valued his actual skills, his discipline, his character, and his ability to see the value in the unseen, allowing him to use his greatest strengths for constructive peace, not just personal survival. The duties were revolutionary. David's first mandate was to overhaul all HR protocols, ensuring that employee dignity was paramount. He was to implement mandatory de-escalation training and conic ethical audits. His strength would now be used to protect the vulnerable, making the workplace a humane, disciplined environment. The morning ritual, the most important part of David's day, changed, becoming a powerful symbol of their revitalized life. David drove Leo to school in the warm sunlight, now wearing a sharp, tailored suit. He no longer felt the professional necessity to hide his work or his life. He was fully and unapologetically present and whole. One quiet, perfect Saturday morning, Evelyn joined them for a simple pancake breakfast in David's small, sunlit apartment, a scene of pure domestic normalcy that was more valuable to her than any high-stakes negotiation table. The external, crippling titles of Janitor and Billionaire finally faded away completely. They were simply David, Leo, and Evelyn, sharing a simple meal, building a life together from the wreckage of their past. Their bond was built entirely and firmly on mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and genuine listening. Evelyn was deeply healed by David's grounded reality and his unwavering ethics. David was profoundly empowered by Evelyn's fierce, non-judgmental respect and powerful support. David's extended family, witnessing his calm dignity and his success born from quiet integrity rather than aggressive ambition, finally and permanently understood that a life of stability and powerful emotional presence was an achievement far greater than any life of accumulated, restless, unexamined wealth. The tension and suffocating judgment that had once filled David's world were replaced by a quiet, deep, unconditional warmth. A slow, organic, dignified future unfolded for the three of them, where healing and mutual respect happened brick by quiet, steady brick. David finally understood the fundamental, absolute truth. The true, non-negotiable respect he needed wasn't something to be begged for or forcefully demanded. It had to be earned through consistent, dignified, ethical living. He had earned it by choosing his son's well-being and his own moral center over aggressive, self-serving ambition. The extended family, profoundly humbled by Evelyn's public validation and David's quiet, steady success, was forced to confront a painful but necessary lesson. A person's true, deep value is never defined by their professional title or their external uniform. They had to learn to look deeper. Leo's profound pride in his father became intrinsic and immovable. He no longer needed to compare his father to any others. He knew his father was strong, true, and immensely powerful where it counted most, in his heart, his discipline, and his life choices. Evelyn, the young billionaire, finally found the grounded normalcy she had unknowingly, desperately been craving. The single dad's simple, honest life and the powerful, quiet love of his son anchored her high-stress, tumultuous world, providing her with a purpose far deeper and more meaningful than corporate profit or accumulating wealth. The two dramatically different worlds, the marble tower and the small, quiet apartment, merged completely and seamlessly, bound by profound sincerity and absolute shared human values. There was no planned, grand, dramatic proposal, no ostentatious, media-driven, flashy moment of commitment. Their bond was shown in the daily, simple choices to be present for each other and for Leo, building a secure, happy life together, one quiet, steady morning at a time. Their viral story closed with a powerful, resonating, universal message. A person's true, inherent value lies in their character, their selfless sacrifice, and their unwavering dedication, never their financial designation or their social status. The final, lasting, essential respect that David achieved started not in the billionaire's opulent ballroom, but deep within his own quiet, courageous heart, perfectly solidified by the unwavering love and fierce pride shining in his son's eyes. The soft, golden morning light streamed brilliantly through the small kitchen window, illuminating David, Leo, and Evelyn together, sharing a quiet, perfect moment of peace and gratitude. An unconventional, beautifully balanced new family had been powerfully formed. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to NL Touching Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.